I now call to order the regular scheduled meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Notice to the public, the time, the date, the place, and the agenda for this meeting was published as a legal notice on November 5th, 2018 in the Aiken Standard. Notice to contiguous property owners were mailed, and public notice signs were posted on or before November the 7th, 2018. Notice of this meeting was also sent to the city webpage, to the city clerk for posting on the Finance Administration Notice Board and the Municipal Building Notice Board at least 24 hours before this meeting. Agenda sheets were mailed or emailed to interested parties. As a reminder, it is unlawful for any person giving testimony to this board knowingly providing false information that's according to Section 22-9 of the Aiken Municipal Code. Each infraction is a separate offense with a penalty of up to 30 days in jail and or a fine of $1,092.50. Any person that wishes to receive copies of today's proceedings, we ask that you please sign up on the sign-up sheet just beyond the double doors, or you can call the planning department. When addressing the board, please occupy the podium in front of us, and please state your name and your address. To the board, you have received copies of the minutes of the October 23rd, 2018 meetings. Are there any corrections or additions? I have two very minor. It's on page 3, second paragraph. And it is as instead of probably as of this old house. And then there's a second one when it talks about Board Member Dukes. You have she decides twice. One need to be stricken. Are there any other corrections or additions? The chair would entertain a motion.
I make a motion that the minutes are accepted with the corrections.
A second.
Julie, second. It's been properly moved and second that the minutes be be accepted with the corrections. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor show by raise of the right hand. The motion is passed unanimously. Orders, final orders.
Mr. Chairman, we have final orders from the last meeting.
Thank you. While the final orders is being circulated, we'll move on with the agenda. That is the only item of old business. We'll move directly into new business. And I call your attention to application 19-93006. That's a request for a variance to section 4.2.1 of the zoning ordinance regarding front and side yard setbacks. And this is to permit the construction of an attached carport, and it's zoned RASS, and the address is 338 Dupree Place, Southwest, to the city. Has this been properly posted?
It has.
Any inquiries that you wish to share with the board?
No inquiries or comments.
Thank you. Discussion? Present presentation?
Yeah. So what you have before you is a variance request, as you noted, for a approximate 250 square foot carport that would require a front and side yard setback variance. The property is at 338 Dupree Place, Southwest. It is essentially at the beginning of the Dupree Place cul-de-sac on the north side. The property backs directly onto Coker Spring Road. The property is also about 2 lots to the west of Sandhurst Place, the Sandhurst Place cul-de-sac. The property is about 0.8 acres roughly. It contains a single-family residence. The property is zoned residential single-family stable, which has a number of it's a legal non-conforming lot in the RSS district. RSS district lots require a minimum of 3 acres and have a front yard setback of 50 feet and side and rear yard setbacks of 25 feet. So in that sense, the lot is legal non-conforming and the structure is legal non-conforming to one of the setbacks, the side yard setback to the east. The applicants would like to construct about a roughly 650 square foot carport that would be would require a 2-foot side yard variance to the east and a roughly 25-foot a front yard setback of roughly 38 feet where 50 feet is required. The properties adjacent on all sides, north, west, and south are all residential. The property directly to the east is owned by the City of Aiken, and on the front side contains the Girl Scout cabin, and on the rear side contains Coker Spring. The one note that staff would have is that we made a mention that as is typical of homes constructed in this time period, the primary structure did not include a garage. We can't confirm that it did or did not include a garage. We tried to go back and find records. It looks like it may have had a carport on the east side at some point and got added onto, but we weren't able to confirm that with building records. A lot of them don't go back all that far as finding that, so we didn't find that. Definitely, potentially the applicant could confirm, but it was not of the applicant's doing. It would have been purchased like that, it appears. A number of the residences in the vicinity either do have a attached or detached car covering of some kind, whether it be a garage or a carport. So it's likely that it probably did have a carport potentially on one side of the house at one point. So with that said, some unique kind of components staff presented. All properties surrounding it are also zoned to RSS. The applicant has provided a kind of a graphical representation of where it would be located. The staff has provided a photo here. You see a horse fence essentially on, I guess, on the east property line there. That would be roughly 2 feet off of that horse fence. Actually maybe a little less than that, because I believe the property line may fall on the other side of the horse fence. That's not been verified, but it gives you a rough idea of where that property line may be. Significant of note for this particular property is that there is a fair amount of terrain, topographical relief on the back side. It slopes down fairly severely toward Coker Spring, so it does limit the amount of kind of, I would say, flat developable space on the lot without some significant investment to try to flatten some places out with respect to the house. And with that, staff would entertain any questions from the board.
I assume that in the immediate area, that all the properties is RSS. They are not 3 acres, that they've been grandfathered. That's prior to the zoning ordinance being changed?
They were rezoned, to the RS district collectively in the past, and very few of them, especially in the immediate vicinity, conform to the RSS district.
Yeah. And I wonder what type of flying horse would they have if they had a stable there. Any questions to the city from the board? John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ryan, would you please explain to me the difference between a legal conforming property and a legal non-conforming structure?
So a legal non-conforming property in this case is a property that's already been built upon, that the property itself does not meet the dimensions of the district that it is located in. So the RSS district requires a 3 acre minimum. This lot is smaller than that, so therefore you have a legal non-conforming lot. Legal non-conforming structure, regardless of the property size, the lot size, we're talking about the location of the structure itself on the lot with respect to setbacks. And because there is a 25-foot setback requirement, I believe let's see, I'm trying to think, I think the primary residence, I think it's roughly 21 feet from the east property or right side property line. So without verifying that in the field, that, you know, if that were less than 25 feet, you would have a legal non-conforming structure, in which case both cases are an instance where the zoning would have permitted that at the time, and at some point it got rezoned to the RSS district, which then made it legal non-conforming.
It's another way of saying that
Grandfather.
aspects are grandfathered in.
That's correct.
Is the property legal conforming or non-conforming?
Legal non-conforming.
Okay, because you have legal conforming.
Sorry, legal non-conforming.
Okay. Thank you.
But
Ryan, it was mentioned in here a bridle path, and I see on the drawing a bridle path. Is that the 14-foot bridle path right of way on what appears to be the west side of the property?
I believe so, yes. Except for, yeah, we weren't able to verify that from from documents that we had found, but that was on information provided by the applicant.
Okay, then, and I'm sorry for my confusion, but where is the sewer line located on this property? It mentioned a sewer line.
The sewer line, I believe the sewer line, where did we mention that?
Maybe I just missed it, but I'm sorry, it was a storm sewer.
The storm sewer?
Storm sewer,
Yeah, the storm sewer,
line.
the storm sewer, I believe, is primarily on the city side. It's on the
Girl Scout.
on the Girl Scout property.
Side.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So we don't know where exactly it is then?
I don't have it specifically located on this side, but it is on the back. You can see where it daylights on the back side of the adjacent property.
Okay, so that would be obviously the eastern side.
Right.
The western property line of the Girl Scout cabin, or
Correct.
the eastern property line of the property in question. Okay.
Right.
the Girl Scout cabin is owned by the Girl Scouts, not the city.
The property is owned by the city. But yeah, I believe the Girl Scouts, I'm not sure if it's a long-term lease or they actually own the structure, but the actual property it sits on is a city of Aiken titled property.
Okay.
Does the fact that this is city-owned property to the right bear on this request at all?
It doesn't specifically spell that out, but I would assume that you would look at that as you know.
I mean, as a neighbor, how do you feel about this?
I feel that the city property has a lower likelihood to have development on it, as it's been in the city's. I believe it was one of the first properties deeded over to the city. I want to say is around the late 1800s. So it has had very little change other than maintenance of that storm sewer line that went through the property, and just maintenance of the structures and Coker Spring itself. So I would say it has a fairly low likelihood of being significantly developed in the future.
Thank you.
I guess one quick follow-up on that, just to be clear. So the city's official stance is they don't they don't have an objection to the encroachment on the property line over there?
Correct.
Yes, no, okay.
Yeah.
Do we have further questions from the board to the city?
The only, one more question, right, the only drawing that they have submitted is the plan view showing what appears to be the new garage and then some type of connecting structure to the house, is
That's
that right?
correct.
So this would be an attached, deemed attached?
It is shown as attached. The variance would be required whether it be attached or detached in this particular case, but it's shown as being attached.
Okay.
And the design review board would be the one to approve the design of it.
That's correct. So the design review board would not hear any application prior to, if it requires action by the BZA. And so that's the order of operations as far as the city before, so it'd go before the BZA. If it receives this variance, then it would go to design review board for architectural review.
Thank you. I didn't think that you could have a garage out in front of, or a carport out in front of the house.
Yeah, typically it can't extend by from the front plane of the house. That's correct. Well, let me say that again. If it's attached, there's no, I don't believe there's a requirement that it be behind the front plane of the house. I believe we limit the amount of frontage it can be. In some newer subdivisions, there is, like planned subdivisions, we have some specific requirements on where the garage can be, but it's, I can look that up and verify though. Yeah, it specifically deals with it as accessory structures in that case, location of where you could put an accessory structure, but not the garage itself if it is an attached garage. It simply would have to meet setback requirements.
So if this weren't attached, it wouldn't be allowed to be there?
It would need, I guess, yeah, an additional variance if it were not attached.
And attached closed in, or just attached with a roof over it?
In this case, it doesn't matter. The accessory structure would be for a roofed structure or an enclosed roof structure would be treated the same in the ordinance.
Okay, so as long as it has a roof over it.
Correct.
So then when we're only dealing with the closeness to the property line.
Correct.
Does the board have any further questions? Thank you. Mrs. Carmen?
Good evening. My name is Nancy Carmen. My address is 338 Dupree Place Southwest, Aiken.
Ms. Carmen, you received a copy of the staff report.
I did.
Do you wish to embellish the report or just respond to and from questions to the board?
I have just a few brief comments.
Please.
Good evening. Thank you for your time and attention in this matter. I know that at least Mr. Brecht and maybe some others of you had an opportunity to drive down to the cul-de-sac at the end of Dupree, and I think you will agree with my husband and I that it truly is a gem within the city of Aiken. We are incredibly happy to have found property there and to be a part of the community that resides there. It is our intention with this change in our house to enhance the livability of the house for us and to enhance as best we can that very special neighborhood and not to detract from it in any way. Mr. Coward, to answer your questions concerning the bridle path, and Mr. Blands as well, and a number of people who have helped me within the city of Aiken to try to figure it out. In the 1940s, I believe, Tommy Leitner, in the sale of the property, which included all the property on Berry Road, which was part of the academy and all of those things, deeded to the horsemen and women of the city of Aiken and the carriage driving residents of the city of Aiken a permanent bridle path, 14 feet wide, that runs along the west side of our house and the east side of the adjoining residence. As far as we can tell, no one is paying taxes on it. No one is claiming ownership. I can testify that no one is taking care of the trees located therein. However, the city of Aiken did put in a storm sewer, and it runs, we have storm sewers running on either side of our property, one to the east on the Girl Scout property and one on that bridle path. So, an interesting little tidbit about the city.
Okay.
And with that, I will answer any questions that you may have.
Questions of Ms. Carlin?
What is the, I see the garage, when I was by there today, and there was nobody at home, I did ring the doorbell and...
And I was out riding horses, sorry.
Anyway, when I looked at the side, I thought, oh boy, that's going to be really tight. I was thinking you were building right beside the house. For some reason, I didn't see the back of this until later today, when I was not there. Now, what is that little pad looking thing behind the square, I mean the rectangle that says new? The rectangle that says new, and then there's, it looks like another.
This is just, this will be a connector room that comes off this room and goes to the carport.
So it's going to be another room or just shelter?
It will be,
like a porch?
It will be enclosed.
Okay, okay.
For the most part, to deal with what the next meeting that we will be dealing with is the historic preservation, to make sure that it's something that's brick, so it stays with the design of the house.
Okay. Now, how is the garage where it's located going to affect your driveway? Are you going to have to reconfigure your circle
yes,
driveway?
where we, it will significantly impact that, and I don't know exactly where it's going to be because I'm waiting to hear what your decision is, because even a couple feet one way or the other is going to greatly impact that. But we anticipate that this driveway will not exist, and there will be a single driveway that comes in closer to the center, more toward the west of the property.
I sure did like the configuration of the one you've got right now.
It's very handy, a little narrow, but very handy. Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, you're going to have to remove 2 trees?
We anticipate we will have to remove 5 trees.
Okay. Well, I'm talking about where the garage is located, though. That's the two of them, right? Okay.
Well, actually, they're the one that's right by the house, which I'm told needs to go anyway, which just makes me sick because I love these trees. And then there are actually 3 very close in a clump. You can only see 2 of them. And then there's one just a hair back that's evidently what you all call a junk tree. You know, it's precious to me, having come from the western part of the United States, but it will be too close to the building, and it will be impacted and weakened, and then it will fall over. So
Okay.
it
So
has
take
to
it
be
out.
taken out
Okay.
as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Wait till the next ice storm, you'll change your...
Oh, I'm scared for that ice storm, and sometimes I wake up and think, oh, no ice, no ice.
Well, part of my concern again then is how that garage sticking out that far in front of the house is going to look, but I guess we'll leave that to the design review board to decide if that's feasible.
And, you know, it's the pie-shaped lot means it's a function of the further you move it away from the side lot, the further it has to go forward, or you can't get into it.
Because when we were there today, I thought you were going straight beside there, and I thought, ooh, that's going to be a tight fit. Maybe they have little cars.
Yeah.
But, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not understanding about the little square, why it has to be there. That square that you said had to be
The
there.
little room.
The room that kind of connects? Well, if you were to, are you saying if you move the carport over more in front of the house? Or
No, I just don't understand. I mean, people sometimes come and they want a carport, but they don't ask to build onto their house, too. So
Well, the house was built in 1959, so that means there are very few closets, and the closets that are there are very small. And that connector room, frankly, will be mostly a hallway with cabinets and shelving on either side, and it will also be a laundry room. I am firmly convinced that the portion of the house that is on the east side, which is finished in, now I can't think what the historic, it's wooden board siding. It's not brick. The house is predominantly brick, but that little section on the east side is done in wood. And having visited my relatives in South Carolina my whole life, I can recognize a carport. It's down 2 steps from the house. It has a washer and dryer in the far end, and it has a small half a bath in the front end. And that's what my grandfather's house looked like in Spartanburg, and that's what my cousin's houses all look like now. So I'm convinced that when it was built, that room was a carport.
Good.
But so the addition, the part that we want to connect to the carport will mean that we can walk from the car to the house without being in the elements. We'll provide storage, and in the future, should there be any issues of accessibility in the house, it will provide a smooth transition into the main level of the house.
I would almost deem that a mudroom.
Pardon me?
I'd deem that a mudroom.
Yes.
Okay.
In Aiken, it's a sand room, but it is the same function, yes. Exactly. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Farmer, I have a question. So, was there contemplation made on making something that doesn't exceed the front plane of the house in terms of a drive-in, albeit either a single carport garage, which I believe your neighbor 2 doors over actually has a 1-car garage, it looks like. So, I mean, if you contemplate any structure that preserves the front plane of the house and actually extends back beyond the house, because when I went back there, you certainly do have fall off, but you probably got a good 30 feet from the front plane of the house to, it may only be a single wide garage, but you could actually build in an enclosed space, say 15 feet by 30 going backwards, which would accomplish at least 1 car storage, although 30 feet would be long enough to put 2 side by side, or 2 tail trunk, and it would certainly give you, plenty of storage to do build-ins and all that in. And at that point, you would be looking at only 1 variance for your side setback, which you technically are in violation of anyway, albeit grandfathered, so no real stretch there. And it certainly helps that it's a city property next door to you, and again, the side setback's a little less sensitive there with just the layout of that property, and you're not really encroaching on anything there. But would preserve, I think, the front plane of your house, accomplish storage, and at least 1 car, if not 2, if you can manage the front-back type scenario. So was that looked at, I guess, is my very long question?
No, that's a very good question, and to be honest with you, we did not consider that because we just were not considering that we would have to fight over whose car got to be in the garage. I will tell you what we did do in regard to your concern, which is having, the front line of the house. That was our reason for choosing the carport as opposed to the garage, so that the walls are not solid. And you can't tell from this, but the slope of the lot means that the carport will actually be in the ground. There will be, the walls of the carport will be retaining walls, which, and I guess I can say that in this company, much of the water that comes on our property actually comes off the Girl Scout house property because it is a parking lot. There's nothing growing on it at all. There's no vegetation. So when it rains, it's uphill, and all that water comes directly down right in the area that you're talking about. We have grass there, and every time it rains, I break the sand off the grass.
Seems like
so the carport will be will consist of some retaining walls and some significant drainage to stop that drainage. So the carport will sit down a little bit in relation to the house, and that allows us to not have a very tall roof. And it will actually be angled like a shed row sort of thing, so that it doesn't have a high peak facing the street, so that it is kind of as minimalist a structure as we can put there, so that it doesn't encroach on the street, because we're very concerned that we don't want a big ugly building that close to the street. That will impair Dupree Street in the way it feels. And so that's what we've done to alleviate the concern that you have.
Yeah. I guess with regards to runoff from an adjacent property, you certainly have legal recourse to approach the city on that. I would encourage you to do that, because every property owner is required to contain their water in a proper way. So if you're getting something that's inappropriate running into your thing, I can point you in the right direction.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I guess the board is challenged with, trying to come up with a combination for someone that has, in this particular case, a hardship in an area that's not really properly laid out or zoned for you to have what it is that you would love to have, which is a two-car carport attached to your house that creates extra storage and all that. The challenge for me always is balancing what's a nice to have and what's a true need to have, that at least gives you some alleviation for your situation. I'm just struggling with building this thing up and out and having it being a carport that close to the street, blocking your, again, I guess we're not really into our charge is not really into deciding on the aesthetics of it, I guess. But you're just in a tough situation with your property layout, the topography, and meeting all your wants list, I guess, is the trick. So that's why I had wondered if you'd just considered even just a straight-in carport. Yeah, that would be something I would be a lot more prone to giving you a side variance on, to at least get one, and again, as deep as you could make it. You could still get a couple cars in there and still have room to do some other stuff, but that's why I just asked if you had thought about something like that. So thank you for at least your answer.
Certainly.
Okay, one other question. Why 7 feet from the garage to the house? Why not push it on back a little bit further?
Because that is the amount of space you need to be able to come out of your house and turn around and go the other direction, to back out of your garage. If the house is any closer than that, if it's in a straight line, we won't have room to do that. I don't know, that's what they told me. Apparently there's something about that 7 feet that...
Okay, I don't understand that.
So the entrance is on the side, the west side. You would be driving
Yes.
in on the west side,
You're driving in on the west side,
not the
correct.
south side.
Correct.
Okay.
That's sort of, I'm with Brandon, when I went by today and looked at it, I looked at how far back is that retaining wall in the back? From the line of the back of the house, and then you have a screen porch back there, and...
Yeah, the retaining wall, which is falling down, the part that you can see, I believe that I don't have anything.
If I can interrupt, I measured about 30 feet before you even got to the retaining wall from the front east side corner of the house, walking back past the rear corner of the house. I stopped at about 30 feet, and I still wasn't quite to the retaining, to the actual fall off.
That was my thought too, that if the carport or garage was starting with the plane of the house, moving back, there was enough room to spread out because of the rectangular lot. it widens as the further back you go, the lot widens more.
Right.
It also slopes quite significantly, even from the, from the front of the house to where the patio is.
You
It
would have
goes
some
from
slope.
1-story to 2-story.
Oh.
It's a walkout basement.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's how steep the incline is. It's not like that east side is level. It's not. It's very steep.
Okay,
It's difficult to push with a hand mower steep.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I will say, when I looked at the property, just a comment, not a question, that I first went down Coker Springs Road to get an idea of the terrain difference. And yes, there is a challenge there. I had forgotten how steep it was on that, where your lot is and where Coker Springs is. And so, yeah, that's challenging even to maintain, other than with mountain goats or something like
Right.
that. Okay.
But it's a great view from up there, I'm
Yes,
telling you.
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It's a fabulous, fabulous lot, although challenging.
One last comment. The actual fall, though, back to the chairman's comment, the actual fall on a carport and creating some sort of flooring or something like that on that 30 feet, you do have some gentle slope there, but that's not precipitous drop. It's not till you really get to that retaining area straight back that you really encounter the massive fall off, at least as I walked it anyway.
Oh, I would not call it massive,
Yeah.
but I think that
You would have to do some, I mean, if you're...
the current carport, or that current side of the house sits probably 6 feet above the ground as it is. And it's more precipitous as you go. It drops off more in that direction. So, you're saying that we would build a carport and we would have to build up the ground and whatever we did, 6 or more feet. And that would also, I'm just running it through my mind. Why didn't we think of this? One of the reasons is that would completely cut off our access to that side of our house. That is our only yard at this point. And if the carport were there, you would have to walk through the carport to get to our patio. Because the other side of the house is way too steep to walk down to the patio. So we're cutting off the access from our front yard to our backyard, except through our house.
Yeah. In my scenario was if you try to go to a full 30 feet back there. So I certainly don't pretend to have noodled through everything. My main question was, had you considered something that
Right.
that could preserve the front elevation of the house?
Any further questions from the board to Ms. Carmen? Thank you very much.
Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have others to speak to the variance requests?
My name is Sue Hayes, and my husband David and I have lived at 350 Dupree Place, Aiken, for 50 years. And we have faced this house across the circle for that period of time. We are in favor of a variance being granted to Mark and Nancy Carmen for having to improve this property through by using a carport. The property has recently been renovated from a nice home to a fine home, and its new owners, Nancy and Mark Carmen, are people of good taste, and they're also people of good neighborhood responsibility. In other words, I know that they're not going to throw up something over there that is going to be tacky. They're going to do it right. They're willing to do that. We do not feel that these improvements will have any damage to the value of the properties adjacent or to the environment there. As has already been stated, the environment in this area is ideal. It's lovely. And we think that any changes that are made will not reduce that. The changes that are being proposed have been carefully thought out, and they also are going to be in keeping with other neighborhood designs, some of which have been granted variances, and some of which have been constructed prior to requirements that are now in force. And so in keeping with that, we feel like that it's not going to be that different from what we are seeing now. The property and the 3 properties on the Dupree Circle are somewhat isolated from the Dupree Place Street per se. It kind of goes into its own little environment down there. The lots are large, and that is another reason that the effect on the adjacent properties would be minimal. We have personally spoken with the other 2 homeowners on either side of our property and adjacent to Nancy and Mark's property. You have, or should have on record, I may have misunderstood, but there should be a record of a letter that Dr. Fred and Barbara Morgan Andrea have sent regarding this, making their wishes known, which to my knowledge is for approval. And the homeowner on the other side of our property, which is also faces over, has received some variances, and they also have no objection to having this kind of work being done there. And it is our hope that the board will approve the variance and approve the building here. And thank you for your time, your effort.
So it's your opinion that your view from across the street will not be impaired by the carport?
It is. And one of the reasons for that is that there have already been things, but all of these are in keeping with the aesthetics of this environment. But there have already been things that have changed. And in one answer to your question, for the last 50 years at least, this house had, that has been an enclosure, a part of the house that boarded in part of the house. So it would have been, at some time before that, I couldn't be sure.
Other questions from the board to Ms. Hardy?
Yes, Nick. Mr. Chairman. Can you tell me who owns the properties that you just referenced, that so-and-so said that there was no problem? I want to know about the property to the west of their property.
That would be Dr. Fred and Barbara Morgan Andrea.
And they wrote a letter in support?
Fred himself told me that they had sent a letter.
I have not received one, not to say that it might not have with Holiday, but I have not seen one.
Okay. Well, perhaps he said they're going to write one, but anyway, they have voiced that they are approved. And the other property?
Well, no, that was the main one.
Okay.
Just by the way you were talking, I wasn't sure which house was next to theirs.
Again, just to clarify, you'd be the property straight across?
Yes. Right here, she's got it.
Okay, is that the property that's got the one-car garage?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. This was built prior to regulations that are now in force.
How has the one-car garage worked out for you?
Well, we park our cars in the driveway. And our one-car garage is a storage unit
Okay. Okay.
at this point. Maybe someday, but it's kind of been that way. We haven't found any problem with with the arrangement. And some of y'all have seen the property, Judy, I know, and Nancy, you may have, yeah?
Yeah, the one out there today.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Do we have others to speak to the variance request?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bill Goodfarb. I live at 645 Coker Springs Road, which is, if you look across the subject property bar and look to north-northeast, it's the rhythmic roof-lined home there with a stable just above it. And first I want to say that I support everything that Mrs. Hayes said about Mark and Nancy Carmen. Very nice neighbors, fine people. I can't add anything that Mrs. Hayes didn't already say. And I want to let you know that I am in favor of what they'd like to do. To go backwards, that's something I thought of, coming back over that cliff. But what my wife and I went through over the last year and a half, shoring up our property and putting in stairs to go from Coker Springs up, I don't wish that on anyone. Bringing boulders in and cranes, and no. I'm fully supportive of what they'd like to do, and I hope you will agree.
Any questions for Mr. Goodfarb?
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have others to speak to the variance request? Final call, others to speak to the variance request? Seeing, hearing none, the chair will now entertain a motion so we can enter a period of discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Judy?
I move that we approve the application of number 19-93006 to include the following: approval of a variance to section 4.2.1 of the zoning ordinance to permit a side yard setback of 2 feet on the east side of the residence and a front yard setback of 38 feet for property at 338 Dupree Place Southwest. TPN 105-12-15-005 for construction of an attached carport, that the final order is recorded in the Aiken County RMC office. And I have been very leery of that 2 feet, but if it looks like the neighborhood, which is a very special group of neighbors back there, houses and everything, if that's not going to offend them, I think that's good. And I didn't imagine them coming in the opposite side of the driveway, so that does make a little more sense than when I first read the report.
Second.
But second. It's been properly moved and second that we approve the variance request. Do we have any discussion?
This isn't for us to discuss, but I'm just concerned about the aesthetics of it, but I'm sure that the Design and Review Board will
I'm sure they'll take care of it.
handle that.
I know I didn't realize that I was asking them to give up part of their only space for a backyard. But I guess I felt we have to give up something.
That's right.
Judy? No. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion show by raising the right hand. Those opposed, same sign. The motion is carried 6-1. Thank you. That being the only item on the agenda, the chair would now entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
A second.
Moved and second, we now stand adjourned.
Information for the board, if you remember, we had the meeting in December earlier than typically on the calendar. We have not received any applications for that, so you will not be having a December meeting.
And when is our January meeting?
The January meeting is
3rd, 4th?
That's why the December meeting was put on